From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We still do not know who did this or why, and people shouldn't jump to conclusions before we have all the facts. But make no mistake, we will get to the bottom of this, and we will find out who did this. We'll find out why they did this. Any responsible individuals, any responsible groups will feel the full weight of justice.
The Boston Marathon bombings, 3 dead, over 140 injured after a pair of bombs explode near the finish line of the historic race. No arrests have been made. No one's claimed responsibility. We'll go to Boston for the latest. Then we'll look at Somalia, where at least 30 people were killed in coordinated bombings on Sunday.
One day I went to the hospital. My mother was sick, and I saw the hospital, how they're treating the doctors, how they are committed to help the sick people. I admired them, and I decided to become a doctor.
We'll speak with Somali doctor Hawa Abdi, author of the new book, Keeping Hope Alive. One woman, 90,000 lives changed. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. At least 3 people are dead and 144 wounded, 17 of them critically, after 2 bombs exploded near the finish line of the Boston Marathon on Monday. An 8-year-old boy is among the dead. The blast took place about 100 yards apart in the heart of downtown Boston. Most of the 23,000 runners had finished the race when the bombings occurred, but the streets were still packed with runners and spectators cheering them on. No suspects have been arrested or identified, and no one has claimed responsibility for the attack. But police reportedly searched a residence in the city of Revere on Monday night. This is Boston Police Commissioner Ed Davis.
I'd like to offer my sympathies to the victims and the families of this horrendous event. This cowardly act will not be taken in stride. We will turn every rock over to find the people who are responsible for this. The Boston Police Department is on the scene and has been there since this incident happened. There's been a horrendous loss of life. At least 3 people have died in this event.
National Guard troops have been deployed in Boston. Security is expected to be tight in the city today, with officials searching bags on public transit. Speaking on Monday, President Obama said those responsible for the attacks will be brought to justice.
We still do not know who did this or why, and people shouldn't jump to conclusions before we have all the facts. But make no mistake, we will get to the bottom of this, and we will find out who did this. We'll find out why they did this. Any responsible individuals, any responsible groups will feel the full weight of justice.
We'll have more on the Boston Marathon bombings after headlines. In Iraq, at least 55 people died as dozens of explosions and a shooting ripped through provinces across the country Monday, just days before elections. The worst violence struck the capital, Baghdad, where at least 25 people were killed by car bombs and other blasts. At least 14 political candidates have been killed in recent weeks ahead of provincial elections scheduled for Saturday. Monday's toll was the highest in nearly a month after 65 people died in blasts on March 19th, the anniversary of the U.S.-led invasion. In Somalia, a militant group is threatening to carry out more attacks after at least 30 people were killed in coordinated bombings and shootings in the capital, Mogadishu, on Sunday. The militant group al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the attacks, which included a series of explosions and an assault by gunmen on the Supreme Court complex and another car bomb near the airport. A spokesperson for the militant group told Reuters Monday, quote, "More lethal attacks are coming." Later in the broadcast, we'll speak with Dr. Hawa Abdi. She was kidnapped by the Shabaab, and she is a doctor who has taken in tens of thousands of refugees on her property just outside Mogadishu. A federal judge has denied an emergency relief motion from a hunger-striking Guantanamo prisoner despite reports he's dying. A doctor said Yemeni prisoner Musab al-Madwani's life could be in imminent danger and accused the prison of deliberate indifference, saying he had been placed in solitary confinement without daily monitoring after collapsing last week. U.S. District Judge Thomas Hogan said he did not have jurisdiction in the case and called the prisoner's condition self-manufactured. Al-Madwani has been imprisoned for more than a decade and has never been charged with a crime. He's part of a hunger strike that began in February and is reported to include nearly all of Guantanamo's 166 prisoners. A powerful earthquake struck Iran today and was felt across several countries in Asia, including New Delhi, India, where it shook buildings for several seconds. The U.S. Geological Survey said the 7.8 magnitude quake was centered in Khash, near the Pakistani border. So far, no injuries or deaths have been reported. A landmark nonpartisan report has confirmed it's, quote, indisputable the United States tortured people after the 9/11 attacks and says the highest officials in the George W. Bush administration are responsible. The Constitution Project says never before in U.S. history had there been, quote, the kind of considered and detailed discussions that occurred after 9/11 directly involving a president and his top advisors on the wisdom, propriety, and legality of inflicting pain and torment on some detainees in our custody, unquote. The task force, led by two former Congress members, a Republican, Asa Hutchinson, and a Democrat, James R. Jones, said it found no compelling evidence torture produced helpful information that could not have been found without it. It details how the CIA waterboarded not only al-Qaeda prisoners, but also at least one Libyan suspect, and says prisoners were slammed into walls, chained for hours in difficult positions, and kept awake for days. The report also criticizes a lack of transparency by the Obama administration, saying its practice of hiding details about rendition and torture, quote, cannot continue to be justified on the basis of national security. A bipartisan group of senators has canceled a news conference on immigration reform today because of the Boston bombing, but still plans to introduce the legislation. The bill will reportedly provide a 13-year path to citizenship for some undocumented people, but would require border controls criticized as near impossible to be put in place first. According to McClatchy, applicants would have to pay upwards of $2,000 in fines and check in using a probation-style system. If they fell behind on their fines, they could lose their right to be in the United States. According to NBC News, the bill would allocate $4.5 billion for increased militarization and fencing along the U.S.-Mexico border and demand an enhanced version of the controversial E-Verify system to prevent undocumented immigrants from working. Venezuelan opposition candidate Enrique Capriles is continuing to challenge the results of his presidential race against Nicolás Maduro, the chosen successor of late President Hugo Chavez. Maduro won 51% of the vote compared to 49% for Capriles. On Monday, Venezuela's Electoral Council certified Maduro's victory despite a call by Capriles for a recount. A spokesperson for the U.S. State Department had supported a recount, calling it an important, prudent, and necessary step to ensure that all Venezuelans have confidence in these results, unquote. Speaking at a news conference on Monday, Capriles claimed he defeated Maduro.
Aquí la lucha no es pueblo pueblo. Aquí la lucha es.
The fight here isn't between people. The fight here is between the people versus an illegitimate government. A spurious president.
Nosotros creemos que ganamos las elecciones.
We believe that we won the elections. The other electoral camp believes they won the elections as well. While every one of us is within our rights, every one of us has the right to count our votes. We have the conviction that we won the elections here.
Syrian troops loyal to President Bashar al-Assad appear to have broken a rebel blockade of two key bases in the province of Idlib. According to opposition activists, up to 50 rebel fighters were killed in the clashes. Meanwhile, Syria's main political opposition group says nearly 30 children were killed in a government airstrike on Sunday. A new European Union report says the problem of human trafficking is deepening in Europe, with the number of victims increasing as the number of convictions falls. Nearly 24,000 people were victims of human trafficking over a 3-year period, according to the report. But its authors said the actual number is probably far higher, in the hundreds of thousands. On Monday, European Commissioner for Home Affairs Cecilia Malmström urged EU member states to take action.
Unfortunately, today, we know with certainty that the situation regarding human trafficking in Europe has deteriorated. The number of confirmed or presumed victims of trafficking increased by 18% between 2008 and 2010.
President Obama has signed into law a measure critics say guts key transparency provisions from a law designed to combat insider trading by members of Congress. The new bill repeals a requirement in the Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act that high-level federal officials disclose financial information online. But according to the Center for Responsive Politics, it also removes requirements for the searchable and electronic filing of information related to potential conflicts of interest by the President, Vice President, Congress, and other officials. On its website, opensecrets.org, the center wrote, quote, "Without the provisions, the Stock Act is made toothless. Insider trading by members of Congress and federal employees is still prohibited, but the ability of watchdog groups to verify that Congress is following its own rules is severely limited because these records could still be filed on paper, an unacceptably outdated practice that limits the public's access," they wrote. Mississippi's only remaining abortion clinic will stay open for now after a federal judge temporarily blocked the state from revoking its license. U.S. District Judge Daniel Jordan III extended an injunction protecting the clinic as it challenges a 2012 law aimed at shutting it down. The law requires all abortion providers at Jackson Women's Health Organization to have admitting privileges at a local hospital. Such a standard can be impossible for any abortion provider because abortion is so safe, providers often don't admit enough patients to comply with hospital minimums. In Mississippi, all local hospitals have rejected applications from clinic doctors. A group of New York City students, organizers, and officials gathered Monday to condemn the school-to-prison pipeline they say is funneling students of color into the criminal justice system. Members of Dignity in Schools campaign have drawn attention to the disproportionate number of suspensions and arrests of African-American and Latino students, as well as harsh penalties against students with disabilities. In the last school year, 52% of suspensions involved African-American students, who make up just 27% of the public school system. Democracy Now! Spoke with 15-year-old youth leader Manny Youssef.
My message to the next mayor is you need to fix what Mayor Bloomberg did. You need to put more guidance counselors in our school. Take out the amount of student safety agents that you get in schools. Take the amount of funding you give them and give it to the school. They give it to the Department of Education so they can give it to our schools. If I was running a school, the perfect school for me would be more restorative justice, peer mediation, clubs in schools that actually the students actually want to go to and feel like they belong to, and no student safety agents and no metal detectors.
The 2013 Pulitzer Prizes have been announced. Among the winners were the Florida Sun-Sentinel for its coverage of reckless speeding by off-duty police officers, and the Denver Post for breaking coverage of the Aurora movie theater shooting. The Brooklyn-based nonprofit Inside Climate News won an award for detailing the dangers associated with oil pipelines, and the New York Times won 4 Pulitzers, including 2 for its reports on business abuses committed abroad by Walmart and Apple. To see our interviews with New York Times reporter David Barstow on his Walmart reporting and reporter Charles Duhigg on Apple, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. And today marks the 50th anniversary of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail. The letter was written as a response to white Alabama clergy who criticized King's actions during the Birmingham campaign, a series of nonviolent sit-ins and marches held to protest racial segregation. This is Dr. King reading a part of the letter he wrote in jail after he was arrested for defying a judge's ban on protests.
You speak of our activity in Birmingham as extreme. Was not Jesus an extremist for love? Love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice?
That was from the film King, a filmed record from Montgomery to Memphis. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Aaron Mate. Welcome to our listeners and viewers.
Thanks so much for watching this report from Democracy Now!, your daily independent global news hour. We don't accept advertising or corporate funding, but rather rely on donations from viewers like you. Please make your contribution by visiting democracynow.org. We need your support today to keep bringing you this hard-hitting, in-depth reporting.